Yo, guys, what is going on? Uh, 12 o'clock on a podcast. This is the first time ever for me. No, I'm not a bum. I just usually do podcasts at night. We are joined again by Chris Pilati of Woodward Sports. Chris, people wanted you back,
Thank you, man.
and
I appreciate
I
that.
wanted to talk hoops with you again because I had such a great time. I believe you were on in January, if my memory does serve
Yeah,
correctly.
it was pre-trade deadline, but it was getting close. So it was maybe early February, late January.
Awesome. Well, we're very excited that you are back on the show. We're going to get straight into it because the Pistons won a basketball game.
Yeah.
We have 10 wins, which, I guess that's a moral victory for Pistons fans right now that we have 10 wins. It's pretty lonely over here.
Yeah.
But one of the first topics that I wanted to get into was the Pistons Nets game. And if you did get to watch it,
Yes.
What were your takeaways from that victory against the Brooklyn Nets?
That when things are done right, and that comes from, players executing, coaches drawing up sets and making the right rotations and everything like that. When things go right, this team is not a 10-win team. And I know that I don't want to get into this slippery slope of like moral victories because look, this regime doesn't deserve to have moral victories in a lot of senses. Like they've overused that card at this point. But when you watch a season like that Nets game, that felt damn good to win. It felt damn good to watch Cade and Ivey go off and specifically together, but also separately. Asar shooting the three, like, just that little bit of hope. Now, I'm never counting on Asar to be even a good 3-point shooter. I know it's possible, but I will still take Asar 10 times out of 10 because I don't care what team I'm building. I will always want a guy like Asar, like just somebody that's so additive, somebody that does so many things. So it's always fun to watch him have a good game. Jalen Duren did his thing. And, that's what you want to see. You have these prospects that you drafted high year after year after year, and you want to see a game where it's clicking for all of them or most of them. And it seems like this season, it hasn't been that. It's been Cade and Duren this game and Ivy and Asar this game, or just Ivy this game and they lost, or, it's never really been consistently everybody's game. And I know it's the Nets. And I'm damn happy we got the win against the Nets because, boy, those Kevin Ali, conversations would have got really, really hot if Monty lost that one. But I was just, my biggest takeaways were that it was fun Pistons basketball, and that's something we haven't gotten much this year. And again, I think a big part of that was Monty doing correct rotations. Like his rotations for a lot of doses made sense. It still didn't make sense that Malachi Flynn was out there, but he wasn't terrible out there. And as much as I trash Wiseman had an excellent game offensively, but to me it was like, I know Monty gave him credit, but I was still like, yeah, but he's a layup line on defense. So like every point he got, I think he ended up with, what was it, like 16 or 13, something like that. And it was like, oh, okay, he's got a nice touch around the rim and he was scoring, but he was every single defensive play. They were just getting nothing but layups. So it's like those 13, 16 points Monty shouted out, but like to me, it didn't even matter because had you just not played him, you would have gotten a couple more stops, and then that would have been in your favor. But yeah, it was a good game. My takeaways are I'm glad Monty's doing a better job with his rotation. Still not perfect. Like I said, got to find a way to get Wiseman the hell up out of there. Got to find a way to get Evan Fournier the hell up out of there. Got to find a way to get Malachi Flynn the hell up out of there. But these are steps in the right direction. I don't want to give them too much credit because it's not November. It's March. Like this shit should have been figured out. But I'm happy that I'm seeing some steps.
Yeah, I was looking at the box score because you had mentioned the rotations, and he played 11 again.
Yeah.
I mean, Malachi Flynn, 4 minutes, didn't do anything in his 4 minutes out there. I'm just looking at this box score, and what's wild to me is Taj Thompson played 43 out of 48 minutes, which I like that Taj Thompson can play high minutes, but I'm also concerned with your defense is such a liability out there when he's not on the floor. And I think this team, they need 3-and-D wings, even though you did trade for Troy Brown Jr., he's not cracking your rotation.
Yeah.
I mean, Monty played him, I want to say, might have been against, not last game, but the game before. I mean, that's the guy that you traded for, Monte Morris. He was supposed to be a 3-D wing, but he's not cracking the rotation right now. I'm not really going to get into the rotation thing too much because it was a win. I think a lot of Pistons fans were really locked into that game. Like you had mentioned, the Kevin Ollie, Monty Williams thing. I mean, that was a guy that Troy Weaver wanted. And, he's taken over since he's been the interim head coach, and he's 4-5 right now. It'll be very interesting to see who finishes with more wins this season, because that will definitely be a debate among Pistons fans. If Kevin Ollie finishes with more wins than Monty Williams in his first season, I think Pistons fans are really going to be just, constantly bringing that up. But I thought it was a good win. I love the fact that both Cade and Ivey had great games, and we're going to get into that in the next topic, talking about their fit and whether we think they can, work out long-term here in Detroit. But I thought it was a solid win. It's so much more enjoyable to talk about a Detroit Pistons win versus the losses, because I could tell you why they lost and the reason why they lost. And it's always the same old, 3 things: turnovers, bad rotations on defense, and rotations. They turned the ball over 21 times. They still found a way to win that basketball game. But all in all, I thought it was a good victory for the Pistons. And they have a very tough matchup tonight against the Dallas Mavericks and Luka Doncic at 7 o'clock. So I'll definitely be locked into that. But all in all, I thought it was a good win.
Yeah, I think so too. I think for a lot of reasons, it's one of those games where you definitely have the ability to win. And that's something that the Pistons can't say that they've had often. But this is a game that shows that, look, there's things here. This roster is very flawed. It got a lot better at the deadline, but there's things here. There's elements here of success, and Monty should be good enough to bring them more wins down the stretch, because he has really no excuse when Cade is one of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA right now, and on the streak that he's on, and Ivy looks like he's just really been hitting his stride. Asar looks like he's really been hitting his stride. Duran's been awesome since he's been back and healthy, which is a key point for Pistons. He hasn't really been consistently healthy for a while, so him being consistently healthy has been a huge thing for the Pistons. So you're right, man. It's all good things, and it feels good to have these wins. And I shouldn't be having as much joy as I have with these wins, but when you have the season that this is, you do kind of really just take these in and enjoy these.
Yeah, 100%. I know before we did go live, and obviously we're doing the podcast now, we were talking about Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey, and shout out to one of your coworkers, Speakeasy.
Yes, sir. Shout out.
Shout out to him, because I know he is not the biggest Jaden Ivey fan. Not to say that he doesn't like them. He's always questioned the fit.
Right.
So my question to you, Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey combined for over 60 points against the Brooklyn Nets. Are you still a believer in Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey with this backcourt? Do you think it can work? Do you think that there's a blueprint for this backcourt to work long-term in Detroit?
Okay, so this is exactly what Easy was blowing up the chat, our heavyweights group chat about it. So I put some research into it because he talked about like their plus minuses and how they're both better without each other on the court and all of that. And so my thing is this, right? Is what were we doing a little over a year ago, like in the NBA circle, beyond Pistons, like NBA circle? What was one of the biggest talks around January of 2023? It was, do Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum fit together? Is that a core you can actually win with? And they've been good for so long. They've gotten very far, including the NBA Finals, but since they haven't gotten over that hump, there's that question. They played, and I want to get this number, 420 games together through multiple coaches, multiple roster constructions. So my point with Cade and Ivey is they played 59 out of 144 games possible between the two of them. So that's 41% of possible games that they play together. It's too early. I understand Easy's logic. I agree that like if this were to work, at least one of them have to be an elite shooter and the other has to be, considering you got a SAR, a pretty good shooter. And I don't know if either of them are going to be elite. Cade has been elite, but I don't know how sustainable that is. And maybe it is if he starts to get better looks, if the roster improves around him and he gets in, and Monty puts him in better sets. Like maybe that is sustainable. Jaden Ivey's been streaky all season, but when he's on. So I want to see it. He's probably gonna level out to like a 36%, 35% 3-point shooter, which is good enough. So to me, I believe that it can. But my answer is I don't know yet. I don't know yet because we haven't had like this is 59 games in the NBA is nothing. Nothing when you're getting almost no practice time because of the way the NBA schedule is. These players and these teams aren't practicing a lot. And a lot of people are saying that's even destroying the NBA because these players aren't able to be developed properly, because that's where you really develop is through practice, through the off season. And you can't do that during the regular season. You're just going out there and playing game after game after game, and then in between you're resting. And so it took Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum 420 games to now look at it, and people still have questions. If Boston comes up short this year, they're going to go, see, that fit didn't work. And that's a team that made it to the finals. So like, you got to give these players time. I believe in just looking at their skill sets, they can fit together. Was it the prettiest compliment? No, but it can work. But the question is, you gotta just, or the statement is, you gotta give it time, because 59 games is nothing. That's nothing in the NBA. You got to go through the trenches. You got to play in the playoffs together. You got to play multiple seasons together. These are young kids figuring their games out. Young men, I should say, figuring their games out. So for me, it's way too early to tell. Could Easy be right and take his victory lap early? Maybe he's taking it early. Yeah. And maybe he will be right one day. But right now, I just don't think you can have a concrete answer.
To your point, I think it is early. Less than 100 NBA games is an extremely small sample size. But the best availability is availability, and that has, Cade Cunningham was out all last year, so we kind of got robbed of that. What I will say is, I think the blueprint for how this can work is, the only way I see it personally working is Jaden Ivey has to be a movement shooter. Jaden Ivey has to be that cutter, and you saw that last game. You saw him cutting to the basket. You saw him coming off of dribble handoff screens and being active. And when his 3-point shot is falling like it was, I think he hit 6 3-pointers and he attempted 9 of them, then the whole offense opens up, not just for Cade Cunningham, but for Jaden Ivey.
Yeah.
And someone had left a comment. It's from Brady Odom on our Facebook live stream right now. And I think this is the sentiment with a lot of Pistons fans, because the Pistons throughout their history have seen a lot of great Detroit Piston backcourts. And he says, of course, those two can work together. The Pistons have had two great guards playing together before. Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars, two-time champions back-to-back. Chauncey Billups and Richard Hamilton, who won a championship in 2004 and gave us, I think they spoiled us personally. That Go in the Work crew spoiled Pistons fans, in my personal opinion. But you kind of see the blueprint. Richard Hamilton was that guy that, ran off screens, just outworked everybody. I think Jaden Ivey has to take that same type of approach because I would much rather have Cade Cunningham run the show right now than Jaden Ivey. Not to say that I don't think Jaden Ivey is a bad point guard, but I know he's not really a point guard. I'd much rather have Cade Cunningham with the ball in his hands because I believe Cade has that killer instinct. When he wants to turn it on, he can turn it on, and when he wants to involve people, he can do that. Because I've talked to Easy about this. Yeah, I've talked to Easy about this before. I mean, this is going pre-draft evaluation, and one argument he would always we would talk. He would say he was just okay, Anthony. He's like, when's the last time you saw an archetype like a Cade Cunningham, who's you can call him a point forward if you want, and a fast, twitchy combo guard win an NBA championship? And I told him, I said, probably LeBron and D Wade in Miami. I said, but if that's your debate and that's your argument, I said, I can't really do much for you. I said, but not every NBA team is going to win a championship. That was always my argument with them. I think they can fit together and they can work together. It's just, to your point, we have to be more patient. 58 games together isn't a whole lot of games. I think it can work, and I think there's a blueprint for success with this backcourt. But Jaden Ivey has to be that movement shooter. He has to be I don't need you to stand in the corner still. I need you to be moving off of screens. I need you to look for those backdoor cuts and just work on that three-point shot, work on the mid-range. We all know that you're one of the fastest players in the NBA, but you just need to slow down because there are instances where he just plays way too fast, and he kind of makes those Russell Westbrook-esque turnovers where he just plays way too fast and he gets excited, and it's just a bad possession and a bad turnover. Yeah, I think if he can slow down a little bit, this backcourt can 100% work. We just have to be more patient, to your point.
Yeah, it took Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum 420 games, and people still have their questions. So, in a perfect world, yes, you want your skill sets to be completely complementary of one another when it's your two best players. But that's an ideal world. That's a utopia, and that doesn't often exist. There are a lot of pairings that have very similar overlapping skills. And they can find ways to work. It's about how you construct the roster around them. It's about them developing games that complement each other, and that's just the truth. So Easy, I agree with his logic to an extent. What he's saying isn't wrong in principle, but I just feel like in this case, more time, I think will give you the answer of can it work or not. You can be the first one at the party, and and if he's there, I'll tell him he's right. But my point is that it's too early. There's a world in which it works. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, again, they went through multiple coaches, multiple roster constructions, and they still haven't cracked that final spot that they want to be at. So give it time, man. 59 games is nothing, and that's like 3 or 4 NFL games. People were talking about J-Mo and Goff getting the chemistry, and it takes time. Everything takes time.
I will say, because I think when you're comparing two wings like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, I look at a similar situation, and obviously these guys aren't teammates, but they were. I look to Cleveland. I look to Darius Garland and Colin Sexton.
Yeah.
Right? Now, those were two guards that obviously there were questions about fit, and this will probably help Easy's argument in his case. They elected to trade Colin Sexton so they could land Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
I think there's a world where maybe it doesn't work, and maybe to some people's point, like they both need the ball in their hands to be effective. I think you can sacrifice. And there's parts of Jaden Ivey's game where when you watched him at Purdue, he didn't always have the ball in his hands, and he played a lot of off ball, a lot of catch and shoot. I think any championship team or any NBA team that is successful, they have sacrificed parts of their game where maybe they're not showing you 100% of their skill set, but they're just really honing in on what that team actually needs. And I think with Jaden Ivey's case, if he just plays like he was playing in college, playing off the ball, catch and shoot, curling off screens, it can work. I think there's a blueprint, but I don't like to compare Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown because they're such an anomaly to me, because I think they're both talented. I think both of them could be, like, if you split them up, that they would both be stars on their respective teams.
Yeah.
But I think the reason why people always question the fit with those two isn't because of can they work together. It's always kind of been their style of play, and their style of play kind of mirrors each other in a sense where they're both really they both really like to play isolation basketball at the end of the day.
Yeah.
With Cade and Ivey, I think it's a little different in terms of we know Cade can play 1 through 3. We know Cade can be a selfless passer, but he can also get his. With Jaden Ivey, we know he can score the basketball. I mean, he can make passes, but he's not as selfless as Cade Cunningham. I can't really look at a backcourt of recent memory off the top of my head where their play styles kind of mirror each other. Like the one that came to mind was Garland and Sexton. I mean, you could make a case with Tyrese Halliburton and De'Aaron Fox. Obviously, like, Halliburton was the playmaker of the two, and Fox was more of that, that scorer to get to the basket. And, Fox has a similar game to Jaden Ivey. Maybe that's more of the backcourt maybe you could make a comparison to. But just off the top of my head, I can't really think of a backcourt of recent memory that has a similar skill set to both of those guys.
Yeah. That's a good point. It's hard to think of one right now in the moment, but again, you don't need fits to be perfect. You need them to be good enough. Yeah. And that's where it's at, like I agree with every logical point that Easy and those people make when it comes to Cade and Ivey not fitting. But again, not only is it time, but it's like you just need it to fit. You just need it to fit enough, essentially.
For sure. Like I said, I think they can work. We got to be a little bit more patient. I know, like, I love Easy. It's really hard to debate that point that he brings up, because, I mean, like, there's a select few of small forwards that can pass and, athletic guards that have won an NBA championship. Like I said, the only one I could think of is, like, Dwayne Wade.
Which is, like, a great stance by him, right? Like, to, like, like, he's, like, if the Pistons don't even win a championship, if Cade and Ivey become a powerhouse in the East and they reach they're in the Boston situation where they never win a championship, Easy will still get to say he's right. And it's incredible that Boston's had that much success, and you could still, like, say, like, oh, the Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum experiments failed. I would disagree with that. I think being so successful, like, I would not call them a failure, but people can, because at the end of the day, we're judged by rings. Patrick Ewing, Allen Iverson, Charles Barkley, like, they're greats, but not getting it done, it just means so much in basketball. So brilliant stance by Easy.
Yeah, no, I love them, but I disagree with them on this.
Yeah.
So I know we were talking about backcourts and we were talking about fit. And I saw this last night, and when I tell you, I was like, man, like, I'm surprised more people aren't talking about this. So this was actually an article from hoopshype.com, and they were talking about a free agent not named Tobias Harris, talking about Klay Thompson. Okay.
Yeah.
And as we know, Klay Thompson, 4-time NBA champion, has seen his role kind of diminish this year because he's been playing more off the bench for Steve Kerr, and he's done fairly well. And in this article, and I'm going to put this quote on the screen and we could react to it later. So this is what this NBA executive said. He said, if you're Detroit, wouldn't you love that? A level of maturity and experience. Monty Williams wants it grown up. So an NBA executive was talking about if the Warriors let Klay Thompson walk in free agency. And I'm looking and I'm like, Klay Thompson would be a really good fit on this team. Well, obviously, he's not the defender he was, 5-6 years ago. We know that. We understand that. But my question to you is, with the lack of, I would say, star power in this free agency class, would you put an offer sheet in for Klay Thompson to make the Golden State Warriors sweat? I guess the market is around 20 to 25 million per year.
The first answer, and this is the complete bias NBA fan in me, would say no, because I want Klay, Steph, and Draymond to play together forever. I understand it's been ugly, and I understand why Klay would want to leave, and it's a tough situation. But I grew up on, even though I hated them at first, I ended up revering the Spurs, even though that championship still don't sit right with me. But I grew a respect for seeing a group of guys stay together for so long. And that was just such a cool thing in basketball, because we don't see that in this era. I'm all for star movement. It's cool. It's entertaining. It gives us a lot of shit to talk about, so I enjoy it. But I ultimately, it's a balance. Like, if you have those teams like the Warriors, like the Spurs, and you have the player movement, I think that's best for the NBA. So the fan in me would say that no. But looking at it from a Pistons perspective, if I'm just trying to better this team, I would go other avenues before Klay Thompson. Personally, I wouldn't totally wipe that off the board, because from what I've seen of Klay, it's been up and down, and again, the maturity. But you got to factor in the stage of Klay that you're getting him, not just in terms of production, but in terms of mentality. Klay's a professional. I have no doubt that he's going to go out there and he's going to try to ball. But Klay's been very frustrated with his role because he thinks he's still the player that he was. And the aging star is a very hard thing to deal with in the NBA. It's the hardest thing. So getting a guy like that, I'm not too excited about. I would explore other avenues because, yes, do we need the shooting? Absolutely. Do I think he would really help Cade and Ivey's development when he's playing with them? Yes. But if he's going to come into this like, hey, I know Cade's a good player, but I can shoot all I want. Like, if he comes in like Bojan, right, where it's like, okay, relax a little. You know what I mean? Like, Bojan started bringing the ball up, chucking up threes, and if that's the version of Klay we're getting, I'm not necessarily geeked about that for the Pistons perspective. So I would explore other avenues. The free agent class, like you said, not great, but I would explore the trade market to try to get some of these guys that could be out there that are, to me, fit the Pistons better in a lot of ways. But I wouldn't totally close the door on it.
I think it's interesting because when I look at this quote, and I'm going to put it on the screen again just for people to see it. It's cool that, executives believe that the Magic and Detroit could be two teams to monitor, but I'm looking at Monty Williams wants it grown up. Yeah. And the reason why I want people to focus on that is for the past 4 years during this rebuild, we've seen so many Pistons fans like, hey, let's go take a flyer on a young guy. Yep. I think that's over. Yes. I don't think you're going to have any more of these project players. No more of these reclamation projects that were high lottery picks. Monty Williams wants bets on this team. And I like Klay Thompson. I think he would be a good mentor for this team. But my only fear would be is if you were to pay him the asking price, because if you look at the Golden State Warriors cap projections, they're in cap space hell. They're going to have to move somebody, whether that's Chris Paul, whether that's Andrew Wiggins, so they can re-sign Klay. They're not going to have the money to offer what probably Klay Thompson wants, because currently Klay's like on a $30-40 million contract right now.
Yeah.
And I feel like a 20 to 25 million a new contract would actually be like a team discount for the Warriors because they're in such cap space hell. But I would probably pass on Klay Thompson.
Yeah.
Because I can see fans saying like, "Oh, you're going after a guy that's a little bit older." Like, kind of gives me like Charlie V vibes, where he can shoot, but like he's not the same player he used to be. And I think Trutella like said it perfectly about Monty. It would give him another excuse not to play Ivy next to Cade Cunningham.
Yes,
and I 100% agree with that. I really do. Like, if you were going to sign Klay Thompson, he's kind of that prototypical two guard. That's that movement shooter that we were talking about that we want Ivy to become. Klay is already that. I think for the Pistons standpoint, they would really have to break the bank for Klay to even consider joining. They'd probably have to pay upwards anywhere from, like, just my opinion, I think 26 to 30 easily.
Yeah, I was gonna say like maybe even 28. Like
really high for them to use, and that would be a majority of their cap space just to sign an older two guard that isn't the defender he used to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I really want Pistons fans to really hyper focus on that Monty Williams wants a grown up, because I think that's the route that this team is going to go. I think they go like this free agency, Chris. I think it's just going to be nothing but vets. It's going to be nothing but guys that are anywhere between like 27 to like maybe 34. I think those are the type of players that the Pistons are going to target, whether that is in free agency, whether you want to use your cap space in trades. I think they're done with the 20-year-old project players because they just haven't panned out really. I mean, you can go down the list of every reclamation project that Troy Weaver has tried to save here in Detroit. They've all failed miserably.
Yes, I agree, because Cade, Asar, Ivy, Duran, Stu, Sasser, these are all guys. Stu's the only one that exceeded his rookie contract, and he would still, in some sense, I would be looked at as a prospect, even though he completed his rookie contract. He's young enough. Like, you have enough young pieces to develop. Now, I get that you're always kind of looking for that, that diamond in the rough, and that does a lot for a franchise, but you have enough prospects to develop. At some point, if you have too many prospects, it's very hard to develop them all. And that's what makes OKC so impressive, that they've been able to just like take a whole team of prospects and make it work. But you see Miami has prospects, but then they mix it in with Jimmy, with, vets. Like, it's very hard to get a team full of prospects to work. And after the season that the Pistons had this season, like, there's just, fans are not going to put up with, any type of, there was people talking themselves into trading for Zach LaVine because they just wanted like 7 more wins. That's where Pistons fans are at. That's where management feels the heat right now. So yes, I agree with you. They're done with projects. They're going to use their cap space via trade or free agency and get a whole bunch of vets in this room and really just kind of end that era of reclamation projects and really just focus on in-house. You have enough prospects to develop, and you have quite a nice collection of prospects, in my opinion, to develop. So now surround them with pieces, figure out what you got. And Monty wants grown-ups, and I think Troy does too. It's just, I don't know if they want the same grown-ups. That's where my question lies. I think they both want grown-ups, but I don't know if they want the same ones.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard when you have 4 people at the table and you all can't agree on the player that you want. But I do agree with you. I think that not only Monty, but I think this fan base is starving for a winner. The fact that, like, when they beat the Nets, just the vibes Like, I think Pistons fans, they want to win basketball games, and I think they deserve it. They've been through absolute shit these past 4 years. Like, I don't even think they've won 82 games in the past 4 years, and that's absolutely insane to me. That's just like when Adam Silver came to Detroit, I thought Troy was getting the boot personally, but I guess it was just talk to season ticket holders, and he basically told Pistons fans to be more patient. Which it's just like, man, get out of here with that mess.
Your grace period is up. I said that on the Woodward heavyweights. I was, all the benefits, everything, every benefit of the doubt that we gave Tom Gores, Troy Weaver, Monty, like those are up. Those are just, they're up. I was happy that Tom Gores is a guy that's willing to spend. That was awesome. But you know what? You've now made enough questionable decisions where it's like, okay, that grace period that I gave you for that is over. Troy Weaver, yeah, you inherited a very terrible situation. You've had years to build it. And there's obviously been multiple chefs in the kitchen. So like Troy Weaver and that whole decision-making group, your time is up. Monty, this is not November. You should not be figuring out your rotations. I give you a little bit of slack because the team did get overhauled at the deadline, but this is not November. You should know your rotations by now.
Yeah.
Teams that are serious right now are working on their playoff stuff, are building momentum for the playoffs. Yeah. This is obviously record-wise aren't in that conversation, but that's where teams should be at this point in the year. You know your identity. Now you're just about getting better at it, and the Pistons are nowhere near that. They're still figuring out their identity.
Yeah, like that's my argument too. And I know this is like completely off topic, but you should be a 9-10 rotation at the end of the day. He's at 11, so he's getting a little bit better. I will give him a little bit of slack, but you should know in practice, or maybe 3 to 4 games, which players you should be playing. I mean, nothing against Malachi Flynn, but he's not going to be here next year. He should not be getting or splitting minutes with Marcus Sasser. I've told people Marcus Sasser needs at least 10 to 15 minutes a night just to develop.
Easy.
You're not making the playoffs. Right now, you should be really focused on getting these younger players more reps. You should be trying new things. You should be experimenting with lineups. You should be experimenting with a bunch of stuff and just go crazy and wild because, like, this next month of the season, like, who cares? At this point, I think fans just want to see progression. They want to see the guys that they drafted in the lottery get some playing time. And, I went off last week about, losing vets that were getting playing time and they were getting DNPs for players like James Wiseman, players like Malachi Flynn. Like, it doesn't really make sense from a rotation standpoint, but I'm not going to get on Monty too much about rotations, about guys that are no longer here, but it's just frustrating as a fan to watch night in and night out.
I agree.
So one of the topics that I wanted to talk to you about, has to do with Monty Williams and this season. My question to you is, how many more games do you think the Pistons will win this season?
We got, 19 games left, if I'm right?
I believe so, yes.
I believe it's 19 games. I don't even have the schedule but I do kind of remember looking at it, and it is pretty favorable. You got the Hornets, you got the Wizards, you got the Grizzlies, you got the Bulls. So, like, I want to say like 7-12 is doable, maybe even better. But I mean, who knows, man? He could decide to play Malachi Flynn 20 minutes next game. Like, these things are on the table. Like, that's been the frustrating part about it, is a lack of consistency. You talked about experimenting, but with him, he's not experimenting. He's just like throwing shit, and it just like, it doesn't make any sense. He's not trying it to figure out the results. He's just throwing shit. Like, it made no sense that Asar start off the rookie season incredible, and everybody was raving about him. people were saying like, oh, he's clearly third in rookie of the year race. And then he's out of the rotation damn near. Like, come on. Like there's things that just don't make sense that he's doing. So they're capable of winning 7, maybe even 10 games. I don't know the rest of the schedule, but 7 probably-ish winnable games in there. And I don't know if they'll I don't know if they'll get there because I can't count on Monty when things start to turn a corner, when every win against the Wizards, against the Nets, these teams that aren't that good, as excited as you want to get, you know that the next game there's going to be some shit. So I say like 7 to 10 is something I'd be if the Pistons got 10 wins the rest of the way, I'd be very happy with that. If they got 7, I'd be cool with that. If they flail out and they win 3 or 4, then I mean, I'm already calling for Monty's head, but that gets even louder.
Yeah, I wanted to pull up the schedule on my phone just to see. I think their toughest matchup that they'll probably have. They have the Heat twice, which anytime we play the Heat, it's a good game. I think the game tonight, that's going to be a game where if Luka at least scores 30, it's going to be a blowout just because how the Mavs are. But I'm looking at the schedule and I see 4 wins at the most, and I'll tell you the 4 teams that I think we can beat. I think we can beat Charlotte.
Yep.
Because Charlotte just lost to Washington. We were Charlotte on March 11th. I think we can beat the Knicks. That is definitely going to be a game that they circle on the calendar for sure. I don't know if Julius Randle is going to be back by that point, but the last time we played the Knicks, we should have won that basketball game. We got legitimately screwed. That's on March 25th. March 29th at the Wizards, I think we can beat Washington. I really do. I think the Pistons will get up for that game, especially with Kyle Kuzma saying you don't want to be that team. That would just be hilarious if we beat them. And we have the Grizzlies twice. I think they'll split with the Grizzlies.
Yeah.
And
what makes sense.
Maybe the Bulls or the Spurs. I don't know. I said 4. I think those are games that they could possibly win. All the other games, I think they'll probably just lose.
Yeah.
I think 4, maybe 5 games at the very least they can win. I don't think they'll win 7 to 10.
Yeah.
I just don't. This team just lacks consistency right now. It lacks flow, rhythm.
But that schedule is capable of it.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at with it. And again, with Monty, it's like okay, you really got something to prove. Like in my mind, you're not. I won't even say fighting for your life as a coach, because in my mind, he would get a pink slip if I could. But I think that again, this Pistons team isn't as bad as the record suggests. So those are very winnable games down the stretch. I think there's 7 to 10 winnable games, but obviously the Pistons aren't good enough to where you could be they're going to take care of the games they should win. Like they haven't given you any confidence that they'll do that. No. So all throughout the season. So in reality, there's 7 to 10 winnable games there, but they're probably not winning 7 to 10 of them. But I think 7 would honestly be doable if Monty coaches halfway decent.
Yeah, it's a whole nother topic and debate if he actually coaches like he should. But that's why I said 4. I think 4 to 5 to me. I mean, if you finish the season with 14 wins or 15 wins, not great. Not great. I mean, Casey won 17 without Cade for a majority of the season.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's that time of the year where, it's getting into seasons almost over. We're starting to look at draft. We're starting to look at all that other stuff of how we could become a better team. End of the day, I think maybe 4. Like I don't see them I know someone had left a comment about they could have a Lions type run down the stretch.
No.
Which I don't see happening. Maybe the 0-16 Lions down the
Yeah.
stretch. I don't think this Dan Campbell type of Lions. I just don't think they have it in them. They just don't really have a coach, in my opinion, right now that seems too motivated to like really rack up those wins down the stretch.
I agree.
So this really light topic. Pistons gave out a 10-day.
Yep.
And it's Taj Gibson. And I kind of talked about it this week, and I was just kind of like my mood when I saw it, like I didn't really care.
Yeah.
And it didn't really piss me off either. I was like, okay, Taj Gibson. So what were your reactions with the 10-day contract with Taj Gibson?
Whatever. Like that was it to me. I don't necessarily expect anything from him. I hope that he can give Duren some good advice. I'm not even going to include Wiseman in that because, again, Wiseman out the door at the end of the season for me. But, yeah, like, it's over for you if Tom Thibodeau let go of you. Like, Tom Thibodeau has ride and died for those Bulls players. Joakim Noah held on to him like 4 years too long. Taj Gibson held on to him like 4 years too long. Like, I'm not expecting anything on the court. I'm hoping that, hey, maybe the adult in the room can, kind of have some positive influence on this team. But I didn't care, and I got annoyed that people were like so reactive to this. It's like, dude, I don't think the rest of the NBA even knows that this happened. Like, this isn't the type of move that they're like, okay, we're building something here. This is something that's happening now. There's been like the rumors, and I don't know it to confirm, but he's tied with the Tellums. I don't know that to be factual. But I, again, wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I guess it does matter since Monty plays everybody. So I guess it is kind of a bad thing. But in all reality, 10-day contracts, he'll probably get another, and then they'll probably sign him the rest of the season, and that'll be it. It won't change. It won't really change things. I'll be frustrated though when I see him play because in reality he shouldn't be playing.
It's averaging 1 point a game this year. To your comment about the Tellums, it is sort of tied to the Tellums if you want to connect the dots. So his agent is Mark Barlstein.
Yeah.
Barlsteins are, if you look them up, they're still one of the most powerful sports agents of Priority Sports. Now, how this connects to the Pistons, I didn't really talk about this in the Taj Gibson video that I did this week. So how does this tie to Tellums and the Barlsteins? Well, if you look back, Josh Barlstein, who played at the University of Michigan, used to work for the Detroit Pistons under Arn Tellem. Now, Tellem and Barlstein were rival agents. Yeah. So that's how that connection came about. Tellem called Mark Barlstein saying, hey, like, would your son be interested in working in the front office? Obviously, he works here in Detroit, and currently he's really high up under Matt Ishbia with the Phoenix Suns. Yeah. So that's how the Tellem, Barlstein, Taj Gibson, triangle, whatever you want to call it, does connect because he is an agent. Or Taj Gibson's agent, rather, is Mark Barlstein. If you want to kind of connect the dots, and kind of like, okay. Like, oh, this is a nepotism signing. Like, I don't know that to be true. I think it's a cool $200,000 for Taj Gibson for 10 days. I mean, who doesn't want $200,000 for 10 days?
Shit.
Like, I mean, you just saw Isaiah Thomas sign with the G League. He said, hey man, it's just easy paper for me at the end of the day. I mean, a lot of these vets are just trying to get that end of the year 10-day contract paper.
Yeah, that March NBA vet signings, they're always a nice little bag.
Yeah, I mean, someone said that Taj is like a Haslam, which, I mean, if from the videos that I've seen from our beat writers, like Mike Curtis has done a really good job of documenting that. Like, Taj is spending a lot of time with the bigs, with like James Wiseman and Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart, just, coaching them up. And I think that's something that they're missing right now. Not to say that the Bigs coach Mark Bryant isn't doing his job, but it's always good to have another voice in that locker room to, help them. Like during the Nets game, like he was really hyping up Jalen Duren when he got that and one, like cheering him on in his ear. I mean, if you want to take a positive from that standpoint, it's just another vet in the locker room that can maybe teach them a thing or two, but nothing like too crazy to like get hype about. Like if this was 10 years ago and we signed Taj Gibson, I'd be running through a brick wall.
Oh yeah, no. Yeah, 10, 12 years ago, like this is like I loved Taj Gibson when he was, when he was in his prime. He was a awesome like third big. Like that's what different skill sets, but that's kind of what we expect Isaiah Stewart to be, right? Is like a third, a good third big, a quality third big. And that's what Taj Gibson was in his heyday. It's just, it's 10 years too late. Now, I don't think Jalen Duren is going to be hoisting DPOY trophies and saying that when Taj Gibson sat me down and had conversation with me, that changed everything and it clicked. But you're right. Can he learn a thing or two here or there? Yeah, absolutely. And that's all you can hope for. I just hope he doesn't get on the court a lot. But knowing Monty,
Yeah, like I said, if you can't teach these bigs one thing, teach them how to set a motherfucking screen, please. Please. Like these bigs, like they don't know how to set a damn screen, man.
They don't.
And like people crap on Wiseman, but Wiseman, out of all the bigs, can actually set a semi-decent screen. Nothing against Duren or Stewart, but like they don't know how to set like a good screen. Like they set a screen and like Cade's getting doubled in 2 seconds because they're rolling straight to the basket. So guys got to stand there for more than a half a second.
It's always so weird because Jalen Duren and Stu have the physical profile of like, oh my God, that's a screen you like really don't want to see. Like Steven Adams screens. Like those screens are different than other screens. Some screens are different. And Jalen Duren and B. Stu should be different screens because of their physical profile. But, they're young, and hopefully they'll learn that, whether it's through Taj Gibson or through the offseason. But yeah, that's such a thing because even when Cade got that shot, I know we're kind of getting off topic here, but this is a quick point. When Cade got that shot in the fourth quarter late against, he got a screen from, I believe it was Duren. It might have been Stu, but I believe it was Duren. And he pulled up to the mid-range elbow, and Mikal was still there and contested it.
Yeah.
Because Duren didn't give him enough space. Cade made it work, but man, you give Cade like just that little bit more space, and he adds that muscleness. Like he is so many minute things away from being like other like a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, if you were gonna bring in a vet, and I know he's under contract with the Rockets right now, I think that's where he's at.
Yeah,
like Steven Adams to me, would have been so. Like I know he's injured. That would have been a vet I would have brought in if I'm the Pistons.
Oh yeah, hell yeah!
Like
every day of the week.
Like you have cap space. Why not bring in a guy that Troy drafted, who, in my opinion, is one of the better centers in the NBA. But one, setting screens, and is a very underrated playmaker in his own right. Like that would have been a vet. Like I would have locked Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart in a room with Steven Adams just to watch Steven Adams highlights of setting screens. Because I think some people are like, oh, well, you can't really set screens in the NBA. I mean, you can. There are players in the NBA, there are centers in the NBA, even big men to an extent, that can set a proper screen. It's just we don't really have anyone on this team that can do that yet. It's kind of like they're not fundamentally sound. Because I know Rasheed Wallace was talking about it. Like kids out of college don't even know how to set a screen. He said that Jamal Mosley from the Magic had to spend over 2 hours with Paolo Banchero showing him how to set a screen because he didn't know how to set a proper screen, which is wild to me. Like you don't even practice that anymore.
Yeah, that's a number 1 overall pick.
Like you don't practice that, you don't know how to do it. Like that's absolutely wild. But I mean, I said wish Taj well. I don't know how long he'll be here, but let's talk about a young buck that we were talking about at the top of the podcast, and that's Taj Thompson. Now. I don't know how locked in you've been into these games. I know I have been because I'm a sicko. So my question to you would be is, have you noticed Taj Thompson's 3-point shot getting better?
I've noticed it. I've taken great notice of it because I'm all in on Asar, man. Like what I said earlier, I want Asar on every team. I don't care who I got, what my roster construction looks like. I will find a way to make a player that defends like that has the physical tools and the young but growing basketball mind that I think he has. I'll take that every day of the week on every team. I say it all the time. If you put him in Christian Brown's shoes last year, like with Denver, with all those weapons, oh my God, would Asar be just absolutely like crushing in Denver right now? Like he's such an additive player. But so yeah, I noticed the shot getting better because every time he hits a three, I get excited. Every time, like, ooh, 16%, 17%, 18%. Like I know it's terrible 3-point shooting percentage, but I want him to be good so bad because I think that him at his full potential is an otherworldly player. So I've noticed it getting better. Again, I don't think long term he has a 3-point shot. I don't. I know people want to bring up that overtime stretch and it was the playoffs, right, where he shot 40%, I believe it was, from three. I know he shot very well from three. And people want to bring up that, but I'm never expecting him to be 40% or close to that. I'm honestly, if he gets to 32%, I'm happy. I'm happy.
Well, I'm glad you said 32%. So I did some digging on the numbers. Now, this is just a 5-game sample size since he's been getting more consistent minutes under Monty. So almost 10.5 points a game, which, that's pretty solid for a rookie.
Yeah.
Whether you ask Gilbert Arenas that or not, it's pretty solid. Yeah. He's shooting 33% from three and 46.3% from the field. So his season average was around 15%. He's double that over the last 5 games. Now, 5 games is an extremely small sample size for Asar. But the one thing I will say about him is Asar to me is one of those gym rats that I would buy stock in, of that 3-point shot translating to the next level, because I'm not saying he's going to be like 40% from three throughout his career at any time. But if he can be anywhere from, 33, 35% from three and have that foot speed that he have that acceleration, that burst, being able to guard multiple positions, being a nightmare in transition. This is a long-term 3-and-D wing that's going to be in your starting lineup for years to come. I've noticed it a little bit where the teams are daring him to shoot, and he's shooting more, and the ball's going in. So I think that's just a testament of him, putting in the work and putting in the time, which I think a lot of people, when they saw the 3-point percentage, they're like, does he even practice it? Oh, he practices it. It's just hasn't really gone in. But, over the past couple of weeks, you've kind of seen an uptick in percentage. And I think that's something that, Pistons fans should pay attention to. I mean, he's putting in the work each and every day. I think sometimes fans, when they look at the box scores, or they look at the stats, like, oh, this guy doesn't practice it. One thing I'll say, him and Jaden Ivey to me are probably the 2 biggest workhorses that I've seen pregame. They're the first 2 out there. They're out there 2 hours before tip-off, just working on their craft, working on their shot.
Yeah, my question to you, I'm glad you brought up Ivy, because that's what I wanted to ask, is that obviously this is a hot streak for Asar. Ivy had a hot streak in, what was it, January, I think it was, when he was like lights out and he made like 17 threes in a row or something like that. Like Ivy, and again, it's too early to say this is going to be a thing, but I just want to ask you from your vantage point of watching these games, because I'm not sure where I'm at with it. Do you think either of these guys are going to be streaky shooters, or do you think they're going to stabilize at a certain point, whether that's low or high? But are they going to be someone where you're like, okay, I'm confident in this kind of performance that I'm going to get from them shooting most nights? Or do you think that they're going to be, because there are streaky shooters in the league, like J.R. Smith was a great streaky shooter,
Yeah. I think that's such a great question. I've had this conversation with other people before. Like, is Asar Thompson going to be a Alpha Amino? Or if you guys know who that is, he was a really good defender.
That's the player I liked.
His 3-point shot just never developed. Is Asar going to be a Alpha Amino? Or I've even mentioned like a Andre Roberson. Is he going to be that type of archetype where he can shut down any player in the NBA? His defense just speaks for itself. Or could he have that Jimmy Butler, Kawhi Leonard type of transformation where they turn into a two-way superstar? Like, could Asar turn into that? And I think I would bank on Asar turning into the two-way superstar. And I know that sounds crazy because he's a rookie. And like, I think just the way he prepares himself, just the way he thinks, because he's a very smart basketball player. Like, his IQ is off the charts.
Yes.
I would bank on him developing a shot. I would bank on him turning into that type of archetype that so many NBA teams want. They want those two-way small forwards that can defend and hit a shot from anywhere on the court. I think Asar can turn into that. It's just really early to tell, but I see the work ethic, and I see the potential there with him. As for Ivy, that's such a great question. I don't know. Could Ivy, I know you had mentioned like J.R. Smith because he's such a streaky shooter. I don't know if Ivy could like be a 38, 40% 3-point shooter throughout his career, because you mentioned it earlier. It's a small sample size.
Yeah.
With him. And his role, if you think about it, last year, he was the lead point guard. This year, he's maybe the second option next to Cade Cunningham. So his role has changed in his first 2 years in the league. I think once he has more of a defined role, a consistent role, consistent minutes of what's expected out of him, I could probably give you an answer. As of right now, I just don't know. Just because, his role, year one, you're going to be the lead guard. You're going to be the point guard. This year, you're going to be coming off the bench as a sixth man. Oh, no, we're going to change that now. You're going to be next to Cade Cunningham. Oh, yeah, you're going to be the second option next to Cade. I think once he gets more of a defined role and a consistent role, we might be able to kind of zero in what type of player he could possibly be.
Yeah, that's a totally fair point. That's where I also landed with it, is that, again, to go back to Cade and Ivy backcourt, some things are just too early to tell. And Asar, shout out to my boy Josh. We were talking about it before the draft, and he was like, this dude's ceiling is Scottie Pippen. Like, Asar can be that. Like, he could be otherworldly if he reaches his full potential. That's why when people were saying you probably can't keep all four of the core guys, who would you keep? Who wouldn't you? Who would you get rid of? Like, Asar is one I can't move off of. And maybe I'll end up being wrong, like you said. Maybe he'll be Al-Farouq Aminu, where it's like I was wrong. But if he gets it, which I think he does, from everything you said, I've heard the same things, and I see the same things in the way he approaches the game. I think he's a very safe bet. So I think you're right. More consistent playing time, better roster construction. These things I think will kind of stabilize them. It's just a question of what's their stabilized percent going to be. Is it going to be 32? Is it going to be 35? Is it going to be for Ivy 38, or is it going to be 35? Like, what are these percentages actually going to land at? But I do think you're right. They'll be more consistent. But everybody goes through shooting stretches. Like, that's just the name of the game. So I think there are always going to be streaks, but I think Asar and Ivy will be less streaky as time goes on.
Yeah, when I watch Asar sometimes, and I'll just say this, and then we can move on to the next topic, is sometimes he will just hit these random post fadeaway jumpers that I'm not expecting, and I look at him and I'm like, man, he just looked like Kawhi Leonard. Like, what the hell is that? Like, it'll catch me completely off guard because he'll be in the post and I'll kind of like do a jab step, back down, and then just like hit like this wild, crazy contested jump shot. I was like, dude, where the hell did that come from? There's just so much untapped raw potential with him where I would buy stock on Asar Thompson right now.
Yeah, I'm going.
Both the Thompson twins, I think, have such a high ceiling. And if they develop, man, they're going to be nightmare 3-and-D wings for years to come, man.
Yeah.
Like, I would not want to be guarded by a Thompson twin.
No, not at all. I think Asar is one of those guys that, again, his potential is, like you said, otherworldly, and it's so exciting, man. It's so exciting to have a player, and even his floor right now, even if he just becomes a slightly better version of what he is now, that's still such a useful player in the NBA. Like, you could find, this is a guy that I promise you, whether it's Detroit or somewhere else, Asar Thompson will be a key part of a championship team or a contending team, because he just does everything you want your glue guys to do. So question is he going to be a superstar, or is he going to be a very good role player? But regardless, I'll buy all the stock because he's going to be impactful in the NBA. That I could put everything on.
Yeah, it's just crazy. I did want to mention just the mid range and the fadeaways, because I never expect them, and then he just pulls them off. I was like, what the fuck was that? Holy, I didn't know you had that in your bag. Damn, man. Like, okay, I see you.
I can't wait for a full off season. He gets a full NBA off season to see what, Yeah,
it's insane. Like, if I had to have him work with one former Piston, if I'm him, I'm calling Antonio McDice.
I like
straight up. Like, just work on your mid range with Dice or Sheed. Like I think that would just be just a unique summer for him, just to kind of perfect that mid range. With it being the end of the season, and I don't know. I don't think we talked draft last time.
No, we didn't.
I think may have been another guest I had on the show, but this isn't a draft question about any prospects, so don't worry. I don't know, like, if you've gone into
not yet, but I'm going to
top 10. I have
I'm going
to. This is a question that I've asked every guest that I've had on the show so far this season. Are you keeping or trading the draft pick this year, depending on where it lands?
Trading it. I don't care where it is. Get me some damn good players on this team. Like, I truly believe, I've always kind of thought of, again, if you get that number one pick and you call a team like Brooklyn, who I think is going to make an organizational shift, like, I think Mikal Bridges for the number one overall pick is doable, and it makes sense. It makes sense for both sides, and that's something I've been just like eyeing. I've been hoping for. We'll see, but regardless if this is a top 5 pick or whatever it ends up being, I think you trade it. Again, it goes back to the point we had earlier. No more projects. Like, if you really like a guy, I trust Troy Weaver's drafting ability. I will always give him that. I do trust his drafting ability to find somebody that can be useful. But I think that the pick serves more value as a trade asset because, again, we have 6 young guys that we can internally develop. And not that they're the best 6 prospects ever, but they're a very nice collection of prospects. So to me, the Pistons don't necessarily need to acquire another young guy unless it perfectly makes sense. If it does, then hey, take it. But in my eyes, from what I know of the draft plus where I believe this team is at, I just would rather, especially with no star free agents really that you really want, like that number one pick, use your cap space via trade. That number one pick or that top 5 pick or whatever can get you some pretty good. It can either get you a borderline all-star maybe, or it can get you 2 or 3 quality starters. And then, your team is a lot better. So I'm team trade the pick almost no matter what. I don't really see a scenario in which I would want to keep the pick.
Yeah. So right now, if you are following the NBA draft, if you look down, the Pistons are currently sitting at the second worst odds in the NBA draft. The Washington Wizards have one more loss than the Pistons. Historically, the team that finishes with the second worst record, as of the last 5 years, they've won the NBA draft lottery.
Oh wow!
So the Pistons are sitting at number 2, and they're mocked to take a forward of France, who I know people they hear France like, oh, another Killian Hayes. He's not a Killian Hayes. I think if they have a top 3 pick, they keep it. That's just me, because if you look in this draft, and I know, some people may disagree, there are some very talented small forwards in this draft that you could pair with Taj Thompson. There are some very talented small forwards. Like, one guy that I keep coming back to, because I see a lot of Jaden McDaniels in his game, is Cody Williams, the brother of he plays in OKC. I can't think of his name right now.
Jalen Williams.
Yeah, the brother of Jalen Williams. Really good player. I know a lot of people are going to zero in on Alex Sarr, who could be a projected top 2 pick. He's a center, you guys. I don't really know how that fit would work personally with all the front court depth that you have with the Jalen Duren. I think if the Pistons do keep it, they will target a small forward in this draft, because if you do look at the top of the draft, there are a lot of great small forwards. But I think they will go for fit over best available. That's just my opinion, because they've gone for best available talent, and there has been question with fit. Yes. I think you have enough talent to where you can go for need. Yes, in my opinion. And I know that kind of sounds crazy when you're, guaranteed a top 6 pick, but that's just my opinion. If they have a top 3 pick, I think they keep it. If they're like 4, 5, 6, I think it's gone. I think they're calling teams. I know someone had mentioned Lauri Markkanen. I don't really know if Utah is really willing to sell on him yet. That. Brandon Ingram. That's a wish list thing for me, you guys. You know that. I think you're going to need more than just. You would need more than just this year's draft. You would probably need multiple first, and probably Sarr or Ivy or Duren or Cade to even get them to pick up the phone. I know he's a free agent in 2025, but they'll probably sell on him sooner than later if the Pelicans just have another collapse at the end of the season like they usually do. I think there are players out there. A couple of months ago, I talked about the same topic with James Edwards, and he said, "You're at 3 or 4. Are you trading for Jeremy Grant?
No.
Are you trading for?" I was like, "No, I just don't know." Not to say that this draft class is weak. I don't think it's weak. I think there's a lot of players similar to last year where they're plug and play players. Like, you draft these guys, they're going to come in and contribute right away. I think that this draft class coming up is very similar to last year's in terms of these guys are probably going to be playing in the NBA for a good 5 to 7 years at the very minimum. But that's just my takeaway on it. I can understand your standpoint, though. Like, trade it no matter what. Like, we have enough young guys. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
But it would be really hard for me to believe a talent evaluator like Troy Weaver passing on a top 3.
Oh yeah, no. Troy always wants to draft. Especially because, let's be real, that's probably one of the only things he's allowed to do in this group here, that they got this collective brain trust. So, yeah, Troy definitely probably wants to keep the pick, but again, I just think they're past that point. Like you said, fit. Is it possible that they do a little bit of a? I know it's more common in football. It doesn't happen as much in basketball, but like a trade back. Like if you are if you are a top 3 and you can move to like 8 or 9, still grab who you deem is like your guy, because like Troy, I've heard that Troy was his number 2 prospect in all of last draft, besides Wemby, obviously, was Sarr. I don't know how true that is or not. But that's what I've heard from reliable sources, that he was that high on Sarr. So, but obviously Sarr went 5th. So, like, if it's a situation where, like, your guy on the board, just like Jalen Duren, he had him as, like, one of his best prospects, and yet he was able to get him, and near the back end of the lottery. So, if it's one of those situations where you're looking at the guys that are projected 8, 9, 10, and you're like, that's the diamond in the rough, which historically almost every NBA draft has that, either late lottery or post-lottery player that just breaks out. Like the NBA draft is such a crapshoot a lot of times, then okay, I'm good. I'm good with that. Move back to like 8, 9, 10. Get a quality player and get who you deem as your guy. That would probably be like the most strategic and smart move, but it doesn't always happen in the draft. It doesn't really happen too often. Like it happens a lot more in the NFL than it does in the NBA. But I think
Yeah.
I think it's something that Troy is probably considering and should consider. And that's one where I'd be totally okay with. I'm not anti-rookie, anti-draft, but I'm against. I don't want them to draft a player, but I necessarily like if he makes it, I have enough trust in Troy to be like, okay, let's give this guy a shot.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, that they had a chance to do that last year with Utah and Atlanta. I've talked to people that listen to this podcast. I mean, Utah was willing to trade us 2 future firsts to go up to 5. Obviously, we rejected it. Atlanta was willing to trade 15 in DeAndre Hunter for 5. We rejected it.
Yeah.
There's always been an avenue for the Pistons to trade down. I mean, if I'm Detroit and I don't want to slide out of the top 10, I would look at San Antonio. They currently have the 7th pick from a few years ago. I mean, maybe that's a team that you look at because, they're projected right now to have 3 and 7. Obviously, we're going to have to wait for the draft lottery to see what happens there. But that's a team I would keep an eye on. And I think trading down is always another avenue because, the lower you go down that lottery, the less money you're going to have to pay these rookies too. I mean, you have to think about it. If they're a top 5 pick, they're making $10 million at the end of the day. And I don't know, man. I think it'll be very interesting. My gut just tells me they will keep the pick. I would be very surprised if they traded it just based off of this organization and based off just the talent evaluation with Troy Weaver, because we had a very good 2nd round pick this year, but Utah got it with the Simone Fontecchio trade. The only 2nd round pick we have is a 55 from the Knicks. And that's our only other draft pick that we have. And I don't really think too many people are going to get excited about a prospect in the late 50s. Who knows if we even keep it, because we trade 2nd round picks like they're nothing around here.
Yeah.
But hey, you never really know. But did want to kind of just gauge your interest with the draft, because I know everyone has a different philosophy, but it's funny. I've asked 5 different people and you guys have all said the same thing. I'm trading that motherfucking thing.
Yeah, again, I don't want to get caught in the impatient. Again, it's the same thing as people throwing a fit over Taj Gibson signing. It's like this season has been so bad that people have overreacted to a lot of things. So I don't want to feel like I'm falling in that camp. But I'd like to think my approach is calculating why I would trade the pick, but it does kind of partly feel like reactionary of man, I can't do this again. So we'll see. So
we have a couple Q&A questions, and then we can wrap this podcast up real quick. This is a question from Brady, and it has to do with Asar. He said, did we miss out by drafting Asar over Cam Whitmore, whose game is rounding out in Houston?
No, everything we talked about Asar, I think Cam has been awesome, and I liked Cam. That was my pick at 5. It wasn't Asar. That was actually who I wanted after watching the draft until the very last couple days leading up to the draft, when it was rumored that the Pistons were very strong on Asar, and also the Cam Whitmore medical stuff kind of came up. So that kind of made I wanted Cam, but that kind of made me be like, okay, it's probably going to be Asar, and I do like Asar. So Cam Whitmore's a fine prospect. I just don't know what that medical car looks like. Is this a Brandon Roy situation where his rookie contract, he's awesome, and then after that he's hanging out for dear life? I don't know if the medicals are that bad, or I've heard that they're not great, but from a talent perspective, I liked him because I liked his fit with Cade. I liked his potential. I know people were down on his assists and playmaking, but like Ivy and Cade, they're playmakers, dude. Like just be a two-way wing that can shoot the ball very well and is uber athletic. And that's what he is. So for me, I like him. I like him, but yeah, I'll still take Asar for everything you got or everything we talked about earlier.
Yeah, so I think this is an interesting question, and I still see this this comment, whether I'm on Twitter, Facebook, whatever. I mean, people see Cam Whitmore balling out in Houston. They see him and Jalen Green just be nightmares in transition with the dunks, right? Someone just tagged me saying, I can't believe we drafted Asar over Cam. To your point, yeah, I heard the same thing with the medical report. I've even heard from his own college coach that he was a bad teammate, which I don't really buy.
That was floating out there too, yeah.
Which that kind of feels weird to say that about a player that's about to get drafted. Haven't really seen anything about him being a bad teammate in Houston, but from, people that I follow that cover the Houston Rockets, never really heard anything about that, but I can understand the fit. I think Detroit did good by drafting Asar because he's something that the Pistons needed, and they needed a lockdown perimeter defender on the wing. I think Cam right now offensively is way more polished than Asar, and I don't think anyone would even debate you on that. But I think when you look at an archetype or a player like Asar, 10 out of 10 GMs would probably try to bank on that potential, because if he develops any sort of an offensive game, people wouldn't even have these conversations or debates.
Right.
It's just whether can he get to that next level? Can he develop that? And I think he can. It's just going to take a couple of years. To your point, who knows how bad the medical reports are with Cam Whitmore? He looks healthy to me. He looks fine to me right now, but maybe that knee isn't 100%. Maybe it may need surgery down the line, but I like watching Cam Whitmore hoop at the end of the day. He's just a fun highlight reel player to watch.
Yeah, no, I like him. I'm rooting for him. I do think that Asar will end up being the better player, whether it's medicals or not. Again, I just Asar's otherworldly potential, and a lot of people have potential, and not everybody reaches it. I would bet on him reaching it. So I'm going to take what I believe the finished version of Asar is over the finished version of Cam will be. But look, Cam has all the tools in the world to be a very good player in the NBA. So,
yeah, I mean, I was on the Cam Whitmore and Jarace Walker train big time.
Yeah.
I just thought there was just so much talent at 5 that the Pistons could get. Yeah. I was even in the Taylor Hendricks camp for a little bit, but I mean,
good draft, man.
It really was. Everyone was like, "Oh, such a weak draft," and then it's like a week before the draft, and like, "Wow, this draft's loaded, guys." It happens every year.
I was a big Anthony Black guy, and I know he doesn't fit with the Pistons, but I was like, I like a player like that on my team. Again, he's one of those players, man, you want on your team.
This comes from 7 Mile B. Shout out to him. He asked, which free agent or trade candidate do you feel the Pistons should target in the offseason? I don't know if you've gone too deep in the free agency stuff, but if you haven't, I can kind of give you a couple of guys I'm thinking of right off the rip.
Well, one I was hurt that will be a free agent again is Kelly Oubre. I really wanted Kelly Oubre. I think that's a very stealthy good signing. If the Pistons could get that, I thought that was a great sign for Philly, especially for that price. I like him. I like him a lot. I don't really like a lot of the big free agent fish up top. I just don't think a lot of them fit. I know there are people pushing for Pascal back when that was like a pipe dream. I still never even liked that because I just didn't necessarily fully like his fit with the team. I think the Pistons the names we talked about earlier. Lauri Markkanen would be one. Mikal Bridges would be two for me. Those would be two of the top targets I'm circling and I'm calling about, and I'm seeing if I can get them, because those are guys that if my pick is valuable to them, then I will take them. And Brandon Ingram's another one. Brandon Ingram is another pipe dream for me. Like, those kind of guys would be awesome. Any one of those three, if you get them via trade, I've even kind of had a little bit of a radical approach to this offseason in the sense of I would be comfortable, and obviously New York's got to agree to reducing protections and all of that, so you could trade more picks. But I would be okay with trading more picks in the future because I know that sounds crazy when you're a 10 to 15 win team, but I'm actually kind of good with trading future picks because, like, if you look at your core and you really do believe in Ivy, Cade, Asar, and Duran either working together or all being good enough prospects to where you can trade them for a really good haul. So you're kind of in a situation where, Cade's going to be Cade's on this team for at least another probably like four or 5 years. Because of the extension, he's going to be a restricted free agent. They're going to give him the money. He's probably just going to sign that max offer, and that'll be that. Like, I'm okay with trading some future first, which is crazy because this team is terrible, and this regime and this front office has been totally inept and ran things terribly. But I actually kind of like the idea, so I'm open to going the trade route more so than free agent because I just don't like it. Free agent, I think you can pick up some guys like Kelly Oubre that will just be good role players who, supplement like you did at the deadline, getting Fontecchio, like those type of additions. I think you can get those in free agency, but I think you can get a big fish this offseason, and I would do that. I know that's a little radical, but I got these young guys locked up under control. Ivy, Duran, Asar, it's all going to be the same. They're all rookie. They're all restricted free agents when their rookie contract's up. So you have a lot of core pieces going forward for many years. So I would do the Cleveland route. We saw Cleveland do it with Donovan Mitchell. It looked dicey, but it did look dicey a couple months ago. But I would do that kind of move if it's out there for the Pistons personally.
So, the 7 Miles Beast question: what free agent targets? So I'm looking at some free agents right now, and one guy that I'm looking at, and it's at the shooting guard position, which I think that whether or not you think that the Pistons have enough guards, every time I watch him, he's a bucket getter, and that's Malik Monk.
Yeah.
If I'm the Pistons, I'm really considering Malik Monk. And I know he's probably not like the sexiest name out there in terms of free agents because people will look at the Pascals, to look at the OG Anunobis, Tobias Harris, even Miles Bridges to an extent. I think Malik Monk would be a hell of a fit. I think a player like Buddy Hield would be intriguing to me just for the 3-point, just a barrage of 3-pointers that I know he can hit night in and night out. He's one of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA. And then I look at guys like, I know Organic Lindo had mentioned, Nick Claxton is a very sneaky good player. And I know he's a center, but I mean, if you want to get better defensively, I mean, do you look to bring in a Nick Claxton? I don't know if the Pistons will. I think it'll be one of those guys that may cost you a lot because he's a very good player, and he's probably going to be very targeted by a lot of players in this free agency class. When I was talking with Corey Woods a couple of weeks ago, he mentioned DeMar DeRozan, who, he's a little bit older, but he had mentioned, like, I mean, when he was in San Antonio, he kind of took on that, that veteran leadership role and was more of a, primary playmaker. I think DeMar would be intriguing just from the standpoint is he's had previous relationships with Coach Casey. I think there's a pretty decent amount of free agents that you could target that aren't big names. I know you had mentioned Kelly Oubre. I think for trades, I've mentioned it before. I think Andrew Wiggins is a guy that to keep an eye on. I know it's not a sexy name. I know it's not a name that a lot of Pistons fans would probably want, but he's under contract. Good defender, can get buckets. I just don't really think there's a whole lot of names out there that will really excite Pistons fans from a trade perspective, because I know they want the sexy names like Lauri Markkanen. They want Brandon Ingram. They want like the Zach LaVines. I just think when you get into those conversations, then you start getting into multiple draft picks. You get into splitting up your core. And I just don't know if the organization is really ready to split up the core just yet.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. The Malik Monk one, I like him, but do you think that in a sense that then kind of reduces the opportunity for growth of Marcus Sasser? And not that you should be operating under the guise of like, how do we build around Marcus Sasser by any means, but I just like he's shown to be I think he's going to be a very valuable role player and probably even a starter level player on some team someday. So I would be kind of cautious of getting a guy like Malik, although I'm with you, like Malik Monk is awesome. I'd love to have him in this locker room and on this team right now. But I would wonder, like, would you be able to play that kind of backcourt and be happy with the results? Because as we know, Monty doesn't stagger.
Yeah, and then you have to consider Quentin Grimes too.
Yeah,
who hasn't played.
I'm all in on Grimes.
Yeah, but like this injury stuff is really starting to worry me. He played one game and then he's been out again.
I know,
but I know people have their questions about that. Like, is his knees just shot, or does he need surgery? I think to answer your question about Sasser, if you were to get Monk, I think that just reading the quotes with Monty Williams, I don't think Monty believes that Marcus Sasser is ready to play in the NBA. Like every quote I see from him, he's like, we're just not ready to put him out there yet. We don't think he's ready. We don't think he's ready to contribute, which I disagree with. Yeah. And it kind of like makes me wonder, like, why would you draft him in the first place if you didn't think that there was a path for him to get playing time or get minutes, or you didn't think he was ready? That's the only reason why I mentioned Malik Monk, because I think if you brought in even like a guy like Buddy Hield, Malik Monk, one of those guys, they could contribute. They could just plug and play into a Monty Williams system right away, where Sasser, I don't think Monty fully trusts him to make the right decisions or the right plays. And I don't think he has gained Monty's trust yet. And I don't know how much longer it's going to take for a guy like Sasser to crack consistent minutes. That's the only reason why I mentioned another guard. And I know some people probably didn't want to hear that answer. It's just reading quotes from Monty, they just kind of feel like this kid's talented, he's young, but we just don't feel like he's ready to, contribute night in and night out right now.
Yeah, someone said the hell with Sasser if you can get Monk, and I feel that, but I say the same thing. To hell with roster building if it's Monty's input. Like I'm so frustrated with that guy, but he is gonna probably be the coach next year.
Yeah, I mean, like, you watch Malik Monk, like Sacramento, like we all know, Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox are the stars of that team. But the one high-level role player that can get them 30 on a given night is Malik Monk. Not to mention that guy has got some insane hops. Like he's thrown down some nasty posters this year. I just think if you were to bring him in, whether you want to start him, whether you want to have him off the bench, I think that would just be like a really good fit for this team right now. Is just a high energy guard that can fill it up at any given time.
Yeah. No, like I said, the player of him, and again, you shouldn't be building around Sasser by any means. I do wonder if you can. Not that they're obviously with all their cap space, they don't really got to worry about it, but the value of $1. Like I think Marcus Sasser can turn into not being Malik Monk, but I think he can value wise versus what Malik Monk may cost you. There may be there may be a little bit of a value play there. I love Sasser, and I am pretty high on him. I think that his 3-point shooting is awesome. So I would love to find ways to get him on the court. And if Monty just doesn't trust him, then I would tell Monty to just trust him. Like he's one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. Just trust the guy. He's gonna play through his mistakes. I know you didn't want to trust Ivy. You had to trust Cade, but you didn't want to trust Ivy. You don't want to trust Sasser. You didn't want to trust Asar at times. I get it. But
Yeah.
trust them, man. What do you got to lose, man? You literally can't do a worse job than you're doing. I genuinely think that's impossible.
Yeah, for sure. We'll do one more question. We're gonna wrap this show up.
Sounds good.
This is a very great question.
I like it.
Says, what do you want the Pistons' identity to be? I'll just go first, and I don't know whether you're gonna agree with this or not, but I constantly hear Troy Weaver in press conferences saying that we want to restore the Detroit Pistons. We want to be the Detroit Pistons of old. And my only issue with when he says we want to be a hard, gritty defensive team is we live in an era where defense isn't valued right now.
Yes.
Offense is valued. I think the Pistons need to adapt with the times. We can still love and respect the bad boys. We can still love and respect the going to work Pistons, locking people down defensively. But you can't play defense like that anymore. You shouldn't be drafting guys that are more defensive minded and offensive minded when the league has shifted to more offensive driven. You can still get guys that are, good defenders that can defend right now currently in the NBA. But I think where I'd like the identity to go is I need the Pistons to just modernize and adapt with the way the NBA is heading. Adapt with getting guys that can get a bucket, can hit a three-point shot, get to the free throw line. I don't care if they can guard 5 positions. They can't shoot. That's not going to win me basketball games at the end of the day. That's just my opinion. I think that's the way they need to what's the word I want to look for? Just restore. Not restore. I don't want to say reinvent, but just try to modernize a new Pistons way, because I think the old Pistons way of trying to lock teams down defensively, it's just not going to work in 2024 when there's hand checking rules and you can't even touch a guy defensively. I think it just needs to be a more of an offensive driven mindset versus defense. That's just my opinion, though.
No, I do agree. I think that restore the grit of Detroit, as much as I have such fond memories of that going to work Pistons, and also just obviously wasn't around for it, but grew to appreciate the bad boys through the secondhand experience that I got. So I would love for this team to be, defensive minded, tough. But that to me is PR in a sense. If you're really trying to build a team that way, you're probably not going to build anything great. And maybe they are, because they haven't built anything great. So maybe they really are trying to build that way. But all jokes aside, you're right. You do have to modernize this team, get with the times, and I think Troy's approach, at least for the prospects he's drafted, they've all been pretty what I would call modern prospects. I don't think any of them are really traditional. He's going for super athletes, but they're all playmakers. Like Asar, he trusts his playmaking. Ivy, Cade, playmakers. Jalen Duren's shown some flashes as a playmaker. They kind of like beef stew in that way. They've shown that the kind of blueprint of what they want to build, and they've, even though they've been taking just best player available, they have kind of had this one identity in mind, and it's going to be interesting to see where they go from there. But I want the Pistons identity, like you said, be more offensive, because what's the last team that was a championship team where their true calling card was defense? Every championship team has, for the most part, had a pretty good defense. But what was the last team that was like Cleveland last year was far and away the best defensive team in the regular season. They got destroyed. They got smoked in the playoffs. So you do have to build, obviously, both sides of the ball. You can't just ignore defense, but you damn sure in today's NBA can't ignore offense. So you build around Cade Cunningham, Ivy, their potential, Asar's potential, and then you hope that Jalen Duren is an awesome rim protecting center. You hope that Cade and Ivy are good enough defensively. Asar is great defensively. So you hope that those pieces all fall into place defensively. But offensively, you're looking at how do Cade and Ivy work. When we talk about that backcourt, it's funny. We never talk about the defensive side of it. We never talk about that. We only talk about who's going to be the shooter and can Ivy, like you said, be a moving shooter or like that. We only focus on the offense side of the ball because that's where today's NBA is.
Yeah, because I was just interested. I looked up the top 10 teams in the NBA with the defensive rating. Obviously, Minnesota's one. But Minnesota's situation is unique because they have
frauds, by the way.
Yeah, because they have Rudy Gobert and Cat's going to be out for who knows how long, and Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels. Like that team is just going to be in cap space hell in a couple. Probably this summer.
Yeah, I think it starts this summer.
Yeah, this summer for sure. I mean, Boston's number 2. They have a defensive rating of 110. Just for people wanting to know what the Pistons' defensive rating is, it's 119, which is 29th out of 30th in the NBA. Washington is the worst defensive team in the NBA. Like I said, if you want to hang your hat on defense, you can do that, but you need to get guys that can play two ways. You need to get guys that are two-way players. Like the Pistons try to get guys that are good defenders but can't put the ball in the basket.
Killian Hayes.
If no shot at Killian Hayes, by the way.
I think for you.
All right, you did it, not me. But like I said, if you want to be a defensive team, because I know someone had mentioned Miami. The only difference with Miami is Miami actually has players that can score the basketball. Like they have Tyler Hero, they have Duncan Robinson. Bam Adebayo, some nights can score, some nights he can't. Jimmy Butler in the fourth quarter is just insane to me. I don't understand it. But I mean, if you want to be a defensive team, that's all well and fine. But you have to have players that can score on both. Can score and play a little bit of defense. The Pistons have guys that can play defense, but they really can't score.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. It's just everything the NBA has shown us, and they talked about, they're gonna change defense, or they're gonna kind of tweak things where it's more favorable for the defense because it's gotten a little too out of hand for the offense. But this offense league, and it is that way now. So you got to always keep in mind offense. Again, you got to be good at both sides of the ball to win a championship most times, and you damn sure can't ignore the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, like I said, it's just to your point. I think it is a PR stunt by Troy and the Pistons saying we want to restore what used to be great here when it's been on life support for 15 years.
Because Detroit has that energy of Detroit, that's a tough city, and there's a lot of hardworking people. Like that culture resonates, with the city. So yeah, you do want to build that, but in reality, you can have that as part of it, but that's more so in a sense marketing because you can't really fundamentally build that way today.
No, I 100% agree with you, but I really do appreciate you coming on the podcast. I do want to give you the floor though. I know last time we talked, you said you were starting a new podcast. So if you want to plug that, you want to promote that, anything you're working on, what you're working over at Woodward Sports, whatever, floor's yours.
Thank you, man. First of all, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed last time, and I enjoyed this time even more. So I always want to be able to come back whenever you'll have me, because I enjoy it, man. I don't get to talk enough. Sorry, somebody's calling me. I don't know if that came through. But it's actually, speaking of, that we're about to record after I hop off here. But the Cade podcast, I started Woodward Heavyweights. I'm live every day, Monday through Friday, 5 to 7. But the Cade podcast is my thing that I've started, and I love it. I love it. I've been really, it's just unlocked every aspect of hip hop that I want to have conversations on. So anything from debating albums, or drafting a label. Like if you're going to start a record label, who do you want it? Who's your first pick? Like fantasy draft, like anything that's on the table is open and fair game. So I love it. I love it for that, because that's what I want to do. Like the way I look at basketball is a lot of the way I look at hip hop, you know. So I love to kind of do the macro view of things and just really just do creatively anything that sounds fun, you know, as simple as an album you ride or die for, anything. So check out the Rap Cade podcast on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, just the Rap Cade podcast. You can follow me on all social medias at Real Chris Platte, ChrisPlatte. It's right there for you. And then just add a real in front of that. And yeah, thank you again for having me on, because I don't get to talk enough Pistons, because, you know, I get it. You know, they suck, but
football's king, apparently.
What's that?
Football is king, apparently. I don't know. I was told you can't make money with basketball, but here I am.
Yeah, exactly. I feel that, but no, I love basketball. I love talking hoops, and you give me an outlet to. I talked to Easy before you hit me up, and I was just like, man, I need to actually like reach out to some of my people and just get on some hoops talks, because I miss that. I'm not doing that independently, and I'm not getting. This is my time of year, baby. It's March. I know March Madness. That's cool. I'll watch that, but I'm gearing up for the NBA playoffs, man. This is my time of year, so I'm excited, and I'll definitely be on anytime you want.
Oh, for sure, man. You're always welcome to come on. I've told you that before. The people enjoy you coming on when you do, and I enjoy talking to you. Like I said, we worked together for 2 years, but never got to talk to each other. But,
I know,
which is wild to me. I'm still thinking about that. I was just like,
yeah,
how did that even happen? But
it is. But you know what? That was like our hours were just very, very different. So
yeah,
you know. But listen, it works out the way it's supposed to. We're here, and I'm happy to be here talking hoops with you.
For sure. I think I have your Twitter in the bio if people want to follow you. If you guys want to follow Chris on Twitter, give him a follow. He's a good follow.
Thank you.
But we do appreciate you guys, you know, tapping in with us. First time ever. Maybe I'll start doing more 12 o'clock live streams, because this is actually pretty good. I saw you yawning in there earlier, and I was just like, man, like I could take a nap right now.
Yeah.
But appreciate you guys. We will be back next Sunday, or say Saturday. Oh, we'll be live next Sunday. We went live Saturday. I don't even know the days, man. I'm just tired. But appreciate you guys. You know, tapping in for over 2 hours. See you guys next week. Peace.